Israel has unleashed on Iran in retaliation to attacks by Hezbollah, and they have key targets including nuclear facilities in their sights. And while the rest of the world is awaiting next moves with bated breath, the leader of the free world, US President Joe Biden's response is filling no one with confidence. Sky News All-Stars Douglas Murray, Army Horowitz and Chris Kenny take a look at the latest developments in the Middle East and ask what Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are doing to defuse the situation. Israel's mighty military is on show at the moment as they're fighting wars on multiple fronts against Hamas, Hezbollah and Iran to let everyone know in the region that they are not to be messed with.
I think that's right. It'll be a fairly precise targeting. It'll be something though, and it will be pretty painful for Iran, and it will teach the Iranians that if they continue with this strategy, it will lead to an all-out war, and an all-out war will be a catastrophe for the Iranian leadership, who are not supported by the vast majority of the Iranian people, and it's very important to remember that. So, Netanyahu and the Israelis have the upper hand in this situation.
Sky News All-Star Douglas Murray agrees, saying Israel has the right to respond to ballistic attacks by Iran.
My suggestion should be that if you send ballistic missiles into another country, that country has the right to respond. And Israel should respond with the full force that its government and military believe it should respond with. And I would hope that America and any other country would do likewise. You can't tell me, nobody can tell me, that if hundreds of ballistic missiles have been fired into Australia or Great Britain or Canada or America in the last couple of days, that we would listen to an ally telling us, don't do anything back. Sorry, no, too late for that. Time the mullah's got a lesson closer to home.
The most recent development is talk of Israel planning to hit key military, nuclear and energy targets in Iran.
As we heard on the program a little earlier, Israel will find it hard to strike Iran's nuclear capabilities as it's so far underground. So when the Israeli ambassador to the UN said this week it wants to send a message that will hurt Iran, what did he mean? Well, that might have been answered this morning when the US President Joe Biden said there were discussions regarding Iranian oil. Iran has about 2% of the world's supply, and after those comments, prices spiked. Joining us live now is Middle East analyst Laura Blumenfeld. Laura, thanks for your time this morning. So with all of that said, do you think an oil strike is likely?
I think it would be a smart move by Israel. Iran, as we all know, the oil reserves are the kind of black lifeblood of Iran's supreme leader. Short of the nuclear facilities, I think it would be the closest they could do to deliver a deadly blow. Another option would be the missile production facilities. If they're looking for proportionality, which President Biden is advising, 200 or close to 200 missiles flying over Israel. A good kind of eye for an eye approach would be to take out those facilities in the region of Isfahan.
And whilst Israel is unleashing their worst, the leadership from the US has been largely MIA.
I've been spent the morning and part of the afternoon in the Situation Room and meeting with my whole national security team and consulting with the Israelis indirectly because in terms of their impact on us. And the national security team has been, as I said, in constant contact with Israeli officials and their counterparts, and it's going to continue to be brought to me throughout the day. We're still allowed to share updates when we get them, and we will do that.
US President Joe Biden was blasted for his rambling comments, which this commentator called total gibberish. This commentator doubled down, saying this is why they think the US is a joke. Sky News All-Star Army Horowitz agreed, slamming Joe Biden for throwing Israel under the bus for political purposes.
Now let's turn to the situation in the Middle East. US President Joe Biden is calling for a ceasefire after Iran pummeled Israel with missiles, and then of course Israel announced a ground invasion in Lebanon. Iran has launched around about 180 ballistic missiles at Israel now. And now Joe Biden wants a ceasefire.
Yeah, it's really incredible. Why, right? I mean, you have to understand, he's calling for a ceasefire, so really there's only one of two options here. Either he's asking for a ceasefire because he has an amoral policy of moral relativism. That is to say that you have two sides on the same moral level fighting, so therefore call a ceasefire because neither one is in the right. Or he's making a very cold, hard political calculation, which is the reason why he was pro-Israel initially after October 7th, and then threw Israel under the bus and backed the bus over them because he wants votes in Georgia and Michigan. I mean, just recently, Elise Slotkin, who's running for the Senate, who's the Democratic nominee in Michigan, revealed something, and she said that in their own internal polling, that actually Trump is up slightly in Michigan. So could that be the reason? Look, either way, it's awful.
Douglas Murray also hit out at Joe Biden, blaming him for lifting sanctions on Iran, which helped them arm themselves.
President Joe Biden is talking about reintroducing sanctions on Iran, but he has ruled out supporting an Israeli strike on Iran's nuclear sites. How do you see the US's support of Israel and what we can expect to see from Israel next?
First of all, when Donald Trump left office, the mullahs in Tehran were begging him to lift the sanctions because they weren't able to do anything, and at home they were in real trouble. And when Joe Biden came into office, of course, he did lift many of those sanctions, and he gave a huge cash bonanza to the revolutionary Islamic government in Tehran. It's only because they've had this cash bonanza that they can afford to continue to arm these colonialist armies like Hamas in Gaza, like Hezbollah in Lebanon, and the Houthi militias in Yemen. It's only because of the cash bonanza that the mullahs have had that they're able to do all of these things. It's a little late in the day now for Joe Biden to talk about turning off the spigot in his last few days in office.
Joe Biden's comments did nothing overnight to allay fears with the cost of oil spiking.
But as you mentioned, we did see the oil price spike by 5% to $73.71 US a barrel after US President Joe Biden said he was discussing whether to retaliate against those Iranian strikes on Israel, and that could affect US global oil supplies.
And former UK Prime Minister Liz Truss joined the pile-on, criticising Joe Biden's response to the conflict, calling it appalling.
Let me welcome to the desk now the former UK Prime Minister Liz Truss. Great to see you, Liz. Thanks
Great to be here, Chris.
Got to talk to you about the Israel situation. I've got to say, world leaders, our own Prime Minister, Joe Biden, I think many have been weak, but the UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer surely has been quite pathetic in his support for Israel.
Well, he's been hopeless, absolutely hopeless. What has happened in Britain is there's been a partial arms embargo put on Israel just when they need the weaponry to deal with these appalling terrorist attacks. And it's the same issue as here in Australia. They are seeking to appease people on the left of politics, Islamists, instead of doing what is right. And it's not just right for Israel, it's right for the whole of Western civilization. Because if we allow Israel to fall, that is completely disastrous for the future of the United Kingdom, the United States, Australia. So a hell of a lot is at stake here, and we are completely letting Israel down. And Joe Biden has been absolutely appalling in the appeasement of Iran. The only reason these terrorists have the wherewithal to carry out the appalling attacks on October the 7th was because he took the sanctions off Iran in return for absolutely nothing. He's allowed Iran to almost get to the point of getting nuclear weapons, and yet he's telling Israel what to do. He's saying, you can't do this, you can do this, you can't do this, instead of dealing with the aggressor, which is Iran.
And Kamala Harris isn't doing much better.
I'm clear-eyed. Iran is a destabilizing, dangerous force in the Middle East, and today's attack on Israel only further demonstrates that fact. Earlier today, I was in the Situation Room with President Biden and our national security team as we monitored the attack in real time and ensured that the protection of U.S. personnel in the region is paramount. I fully support President Biden's order for the U.S. military to shoot down Iranian missiles targeting Israel, just as we did in April. We are still assessing the impact, but initial indications are that Israel, with our assistance, was able to defeat this attack. Our joint defenses have been effective, and this operation and successful cooperation saved many innocent lives. As I have said, I will always ensure Israel has the ability to defend itself against Iran and Iran-backed terrorist militias. My commitment to the security of Israel is unwavering. And let us be clear, Iran is not only a threat to Israel, Iran is also a threat to American personnel in the region, American interests, and innocent civilians across the region who suffer at the hands of Iran-based and backed terrorist proxies.
This commentator slammed the presidential nominee's response, saying, "Scary stuff." Kamala Harris's first statement in the wake of Iran attacking Israel telegraphs her weakness. Not only is she reading notes, she sounds like she has no clue what she's talking about. Deeply concerning stuff.